Welcome to Stories After Midnight. Today we'll be reading a story called Lily's Father Had Some Pretty Crazy Connections. He's actually the reason I'm writing this, by Trash Tia off Reddit. I really hope you enjoy it. My dad's friend had connections. Whenever my family ran into the slightest inconvenience, it was solved hours later. My mother was fired from her job and was promoted to a higher position hours later. Grandpa had terminal cancer and was miraculously cured. I realized my family had their own personal fairy godmother. All Dad had to do was ring Mike, who pulled strings that I never saw. I used to joke that if Mike ever died, his funeral would be attended by a mysterious man standing under a black umbrella. Dad said it was never that serious, though over the years I noticed Mike fixed all their problems. My brother got into his dream college without even trying. He didn't even graduate high school and somehow got into Harvard with Mike's connections. So I chose not even to try in my first year of college. Moving back home and getting a job in the mall. I wanted to be a photographer, not a doctor, which was what my father insisted on. Mike did get me into a prestigious medical school, but I was scared of blood. I did tell him multiple times I wouldn't be able to stomach it. Dad was pissed, sure, but he didn't say anything, allowing me to stay for the summer so I could sort my thoughts out. He told me Mike would easily be able to get me into another school abroad, but I told him over and over again I didn't want to be a doctor. That was Dad's dream, not mine. I did ask if he could get his connections to find me a summer job in photography, but Dad was adamant that both of his children were going to medical school, which sucked. I understood Dad wanted us to be successful, but I hated blood. The idea of slicing into a human body made me nauseous. I mean, come on, I couldn't even deal with movie horror. My brother was training to be a surgeon, somehow, which was weird when just a year prior he had attempted to leave home with his girlfriend to pursue his passion. I hadn't spoken to him in a while, but Dex had suddenly dropped his love for acting and dumped his girlfriend. He and Alina were engaged, and he just left her like that. Like he never even loved her. I still remember the night before he ran away. Dex told me to do the same. There's something wrong with Mike, my brother told me, sitting on my bed. Dex had been suspicious of Mike since we were kids, and our father's friend had stopped us getting sick. We had the stomach flu once during middle school, and had not been sick since. Which is crazy, right? Mom didn't seem to be fazed, and Dad insisted we just had really good immune systems. Dex was convinced it was a witchcraft. I was skeptical, more on the Mike has connections side. Now my brother was a completely different person. I knew siblings grew apart when they leave for college, but this was a whole other level. Dex never answered my texts or calls, and when he did, he was either studying, in night classes, or with his smart-ass friends. Growing up was a given, I knew that. But Dex became a stranger I couldn't stand. He was a whole other boy who happened to wear my brother's face. Dex was too different at Thanksgiving dinner, too formal, like he'd been possessed by a royal, talking in depth about his classes and that he was the top-ranked student. That wasn't Dex. I knew it wasn't my brother, because Dex hated being categorized. He also hated Harvard. Dream school my ass. He could barely focus in school, his teachers insisting on him being screened for ADHD, which Dad refused, because in Dad's eyes, we had to be perfect. I jokingly commented that Dex didn't even graduate high school, just to shut him up, and Dad almost choked on a mouthful of turkey. Mom pursed her lips around the rim of her wine glass. Dex hadn't spoken to me since, completely under our father's spell. When we were kids, my brother left me little notes to reassure me that I was going to be okay. He'd hide them in sofa creases and slip them under my door, except when I searched his room. There was nothing, only the ghost of Dex who used to be. His application for a drama school in New York was still on his dresser, crumpled under old movie posters and textbooks, covered in coffee stains. He'd only written his name. I laughed at that. That was Dexter, distracted by everything. It was 2 a.m. when Dad pulled me out of bed. Huh? Wiping sleep from my eyes, I blinked at him confused. Get in the car, Dad told me. We're going out. I didn't like the idea of going out at 2 a.m., but sure, a father-daughter car ride sounded fun. Sliding onto cool leather seats hesitantly, I was still wrapped in my blanket, still sleepy, my head pressed against the car window. It was freezing cold. I was shivering. When I was a little more awake, my mind drifting into fruition, a father-daughter car ride was sounding progressively less appealing. I noticed Dad was driving us out of town, which was out of character. Dad hated going out of town. I couldn't help it, a shiver of panic slipping down my spine. I could feel my heart start to skip in my chest, my stomach twisting into uncomfortable knots. "Where are we going?" He didn't reply, cranking the radio up, which left me to stew in the silence and the sound of my heart pounding faster. Pressing my face against the glass, I blinked at the long, winding road, blanketed oblivion in front of me. We were in the middle of rural Virginia, and my phone was dead, so I couldn't even text Mom. I did have several locations in my head, though neither of them justified 2 a.m. Couldn't Dad have waited until morning? The thought suddenly struck me. Was Grandpa sick? The more I thought about it, the sicker I started to feel. I hated the dark, and it was the kind of dark that felt almost empty, hollow, like there was no ending and the road would continue forever. The dark has always felt suffocating to me, and being enveloped in pitch black open oblivion, I had a sudden, overwhelming urge to jump out of the car. There were no streetlights, and the further away we were driving from home, from safety, panic was starting to choke my throat. I couldn't breathe, suddenly clasping my hands in my lap. "Dad," I said, my voice a sharp whisper I couldn't help. "Where are you taking me?" When Dad didn't answer, only stepping on the gas, I kicked his seat. "Dad!" Dad's fingers tightened around the wheel. "Shopping," was his only response. "Shopping?" My mind whirred with questions. At 2 a.m.? When I leaned back in my seat, my hands delving between the gaps by habit, I pulled out a folded piece of card. I thought it was trash, but peering at it, something was written in black ink. When a streetlight finally appeared, a sickly glow illuminating the note, I found myself staring at a single word written in my brother's old writing. Dex's handwriting had drastically changed. For example, on my recent birthday card, he signed his name in perfect calligraphy. But I knew his old writing, his scrappy scribbles that were hard to read, which was exactly what I was staring at, and it was unmistakable, something I couldn't ignore, even when I tried to push down that panic, that drowning feeling starting to envelop me. Run. My gaze flicked to the front. Luckily, Dad wasn't paying attention. "Shopping?" I said shakily, my hand pawing for the lock on the door. My breaths were heavy, suddenly suffocated in my chest. I couldn't trust them. I maintained a smile, but I felt like I was drowning. Dex's note grasped in my fist. Sliding across the seat, I tried the other door, also locked. Shopping," Dad hummed. "We're out of milk." "But there are no stores open," I managed to choke out. I was all too aware of the car slowing down, and I was already planning my escape. My mind felt choked and wrong, and there were so many questions. If Dex had been on this exact car ride, then what happened to him? Mike was my top suspect. If Dad's friend with connections could turn my brother into a stranger, then he could do anything to me. Weighing my options, I feverishly watched my father find a parking spot. I had to think straight. If I didn't, I was going to end up like Dex. I had a plan. Sort of. If I dove over the front seat when my father wasn't looking, I would be able to get away. I had no plan after that. I was just focusing on getting out of the car. However, when I was ready to leap over the seat, Dad stopped the car and jumped out. I tried to shuffle back, tried to inch toward the left door, but Dad was already grasping my arm and pulling me out of the car. In my panic, I dropped the note, stumbling out into cool air that grazed my cheeks. The night should have felt like any other, and yet I was standing in the middle of nowhere. The sky above me was too dark, no stars. I was going to run before I saw what was in front of me. A towering building. The place reminded me of a warehouse, or even a facility, a silver monolith cut off from the rest of the world. There was a lake nearby and nothing else. Dad grabbed my hand gently, though his grasp was firm, a subtle order to stay by his side. He flashed his ID card at a guard, pulling me towards automatic doors lit up in eerie white light. My panic twisted into confusion, relief washing over me like warm water. Dad was right. It was a shopping center. When we entered, I found myself mesmerized by a labyrinth of aisles. We passed a section of canned food and then snacks and medical supplies. Studying each aisle, I was in awe. Survival equipment, diapers, and a whole aisle dedicated to college textbooks. What was this place? It was like a super Costco. When I reached for a cart, Dad kept pulling me further down each aisle, and the deeper I was dragged into this place, what was being sold started to contort in my vision, like I was in a nightmare. The lights above started to dim, the golds being sold twisting into things I didn't want to see. Stomach lining and vacuum packaging, and then a raccoon skeleton. I was comforted by a section of whipping cream and baking soda before we turned a corner, a sudden blur of twisted red slamming into me. It was all I could see, stretched straight down the aisle. I thought it was fish at first, fresh fish being sold early, except each bulging mass of red my father and I passed was unmistakably human. "Dad?" I rasped, glimpsing a human heart sitting on display, encased in ice. "What is this place?" I started to back away, but I couldn't stop staring. I found myself in a trance, following my father. It was like stepping into an emergency ward. I'd been there once and never again. I hated blood, and it was everywhere, smearing the floor and shelves. I don't know if I was in shock, before reality started to hit me in what felt like electroshocks. There were body parts for sale, both dead and alive. Human brains, both separate and being sold with their bodies. People. Normal people put on display? Their skin marked with red pen highlighting their parts. I stopped walking, coming to a halt. My body wouldn't move. I couldn't breathe. "Lily." Dad pulled me in front of one sign in particular. Intelligence, 17 to 25. I saw others. Intelligence, 25 to 30. Intelligence, 30 to 40. The advertisement showed a group of smiling teenagers mid-laugh. I should have been glued to it, trying to figure out what intelligence meant, except my gaze wasn't on the sign, or even my father, already forking out cash. I was dizzily aware I was taking steps back, but I couldn't bring myself to move, to twist around and run. We were too deep into the store, and the exit was so far away, a labyrinth I knew I wouldn't be able to get through without dropping. The store owner greeted my father, and I had to breathe deeply to stay afloat. My legs gave way, but I wouldn't allow myself to fall. Not in this place. Damn. My head was spinning. Everywhere I looked, there were either body parts or people with those body parts on display. Dad introduced himself as a friend of Mike, though his voice didn't feel real, drifting in and out of reality. Hell. The display said intelligence, but intelligence didn't make sense. There was a guy standing in front of me, blondish brown hair, his pupils wide and dilated, dressed in a simple white shirt and shorts. He looked almost high, and yet, despite that, I noticed he was trembling, his hands pinned behind his back. He stood perfectly straight, his chin up, eyes forward, like a puppet on strings. It wasn't until my eyes found his forehead, where his IQ had been written in permanent marker, when I realized what the store was advertising, what my father had brought me to. I half wondered if this boy had the same feverish urge like me. Run. "Ben is our smartest. He was donated a few weeks ago. Apparently, he tried to kill himself. Who would have thought, right? A smart kid like that trying to end it? Anyway, he's been fully checked. The kid graduated early and attended Cambridge University in England, only to move back home and attempt suicide on Christmas Eve." The stall owner's voice slammed into me like waves of ice water, and I remembered Dex's sudden change in personality. I let out a sob I couldn't control, my nerve endings on fire. I wanted to kill my dad, right there, barely conscious and trapped. I wanted to wrap my hands around my father's neck and squeeze until he was blue, until his eyes were rolling into the back of his head. Still, hell, I couldn't take my eyes off the intelligence being paraded in front of me. The 19-year-old boy with a crooked smile, freckles speckling his cheeks. This kid who had a life, a family and friends, and a reason why he chose to die, reduced to an empty shell with a high IQ. The owner gestured to the kid, who didn't even blink, didn't dare make eye contact with me. "No," I said. And then I said it louder, twisting around. I needed to get away. I needed to run. There were 3 guards in front of me. Following the store owner's order to restrain me, they did, hesitant when my father barked at them not to hurt me. "I can assure you, your daughter will have a sparkling career." The stall owner was smiling widely, and I screamed, struggling violently. "I'll take him," Dad said, unfazed by my cries. "How much is he?" $9.50, the man said. "My wife has done business with you before, so consider it a discount." He turned to the boy with a laugh. "Ben is a good boy, so it'll take around 3 hours. Usually upon removal, the brain goes into shock and can sometimes shut itself down due to trauma. It can take weeks, even months for it to settle inside its new body." His smile widened, and I heaved up my meager dinner, spewing all over the guard. When I screamed, my cries were muffled, suffocated. I felt like I was choking. I was going to die. I have to get out of here. My thoughts were paralyzed, fight or flight sending my body into a manic frenzy. I wanted to find comfort in the boy on sale, but he kept smiling wider and wider. The owner ignored my freakout, my violent struggle to survive, to claw my way out of that place. It was dark outside, and we were so far away from home, but the darkness felt safe, while light was threatening to plunge me deeper and deeper. The store owner was still speaking, and I took the opportunity to headbutt a guard. He let go instantly, and I dropped to my knees. I was free, but I didn't know where to go. Everything was blurry, twisted and contorted red. When I was yanked to my feet again, I felt numb. "However," the owner rolled his eyes at me, "like I said, Ben wanted to die." He chuckled. "I'm positive he won't fight back, and if he does, you're free to return him within 30 days, like all of our products. Oh, also, do not worry, the mind has been wiped of his personality. The only thing remaining is the IQ of the boy and his achievements. We remove the core person shortly after buying from our distributor to avoid, let's call them complications." Dad nodded slowly. "Then I'll take him." I stopped breathing, my body going still. Was this really happening? Was I going to die? "Dad," I whispered, when my father cupped my cheeks and told me to be brave. I did try. I tried to nod, like I was accepting it, before clawing his eyes out. I tried to use soothing tones, but they weren't working. I resorted to screaming at him. I told him he was dead to me and that he was a psychopath. I really thought it might wake him up, make him realize that I was his daughter. I wasn't a caricature of what a successful daughter should be. I was his daughter. "Dad!" Except he didn't listen to me, his hands tightening on my shoulders. "You want to be smarter, don't you, Lily?" "No!" An animalistic shriek ripped from my throat. I tried to attack him, screeching like a wild animal. I did try to run, biting down on a guard's hand, but it was my father who pulled me back, which brought reality crashing down. I was going to die. I stopped trying to get away, stopped crying, when I was picked up and taken through a door splattered with scarlet. I remember being pinned down on an ice-cold surface, a cruel prick in my neck numbing my limbs, and silver blades whirring above me. My arms and legs were restrained, my forehead marked with a cold red pen that tickled. I laughed, but my laughter exploded into sobs. Figures in blue scrubs surrounded me in a blur. I slept for a while, dazed from the drugs. The sound of a saw startled my numb thoughts, and I twisted my head, eyes flickering, lips trying to form words. I remember everything was slow, like I had been forced into slow motion. The back of my head had been shaved, and all of my hair was gone. The freezing surface of the surgical table made me shiver. When the sound of the saw became unbearable, I gave up and forced myself to peer through a curtain of plastic. There was a bed next to mine, pooling red seeping across the floor, a limp arm hanging over the edge. The hand was still moving, still clenching into a fist like they could feel it, every cruel slice, ripping them apart. I wondered who the boy was, what his life was like, and why he chose to end it. I squeezed my eyes shut when the saw continued, blood beginning to run, almost black across pristine white tiles. When I opened them, the bed was being wheeled away, and it was my turn. Footsteps came thudding towards me, the screeching sound of a saw coming to life. They didn't give me a countdown or tell me everything was going to be okay. I saw a bright light, so close I really thought I could reach it. I did, half wondering if it was my dad coming to rescue me. Maybe he'd changed his mind after all. But Lily didn't wake up. I did. I woke with a forced smile and a body that felt comfortably mine. I took my new father's hand, the bandages around Lily's head itchy. When my father took me home, I waited until night. Then I went into the kitchen and chose the sharpest knife I could find, butchering the bastard when he was curled up in bed. He should have been awake, just like you were, Lily. He should have been able to feel it. I'm glad Mom was out, because then I'd have to kill her too. I'm sorry I took your body, Lily. And for the record, I didn't want to die. I was kidnapped and sold overseas by my psychotic university professor. I didn't jump off a damn bridge on Christmas Eve. That's the story he tells to all of his customers. So they feel better about murdering us. I still have a family out there, waiting for me to come home. And I'm going to find them. Damn. I'm sorry I took your body, Lily. I'm sorry your dad is a piece of crap. And I'm sorry I burned your house to the ground. I'm terrified of what Dad did to Lily's brother, but I'm so grateful for her memory still clinging to this body. She didn't deserve me until a few days ago. Her voice is soothing, still haunting the back of my mind. It's okay. Lily is happy I killed our father, but she still wants to know what happened to her. So I guess our brother. I'm sorry my dad has connections. That's the end of the story. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below or wherever you can leave a comment. If you'd like to, I would really appreciate it if you'd subscribe for more and maybe show the YouTube algorithm that, and every other algorithm, let's be honest, that this stuff is entertaining. So I really hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like, you can come hang out in our Discord. It's pretty low-key, but we'd love to see you there. And if you'd like to support the channel further, there is a Patreon with early access stuff. With all that said, I really hope you enjoyed yourself, and we'll see you in the next one.